Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm your host, Rotondra Boy, and I'm a trainee career guidance practitioner at the Ekurhuleni Regional Service Center. Joining me are my colleagues, Ms. Mampe Pora, who is a former TCGP, Ms. Nyamakazi Humoto, who is an administrative officer here at Ekurhuleni, as we are diving into the topic that impacts many of us more than we realize, trauma. For speakers for the day, we have two esteemed guests, Mr. Makahane, a student counselor at Ekurhuleni, and Dr. Tipe, who is a senior student counselor for DCCD based in Sunnyside. Together, they'll help us unpack what trauma really is, the different types of trauma, and the wide-reaching impact it has on our emotional and physical well-being. As October is Mental Health Awareness Month, please engage with us as we become more aware of our mental health. Dr. Tipe, Mr. Makahane, the space is yours. May you please share with us what trauma is?
October is Mental Health Month, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Sometimes when you've done a lot of things during the month, you even forgot what is it all about. Yeah, and that alone, if we're talking about mental health and well-being, is part of the things that we need to discuss. And I think having asked that question of what is a trauma, one need to realize, maybe perhaps to give a background. South Africa is a very violent, it's a violent country by nature. So saying it's a violent country, I think on Facebook not so long, it might be this morning, I saw there was some dead bodies in a car somewhere in Mpumalanga. And I saw the comments that in Mpumalanga province as well, it has become a haven of criminals, all right? And that is not unique to Mpumalanga. It's happening everywhere in South Africa. I'm just going to put that as a background so that you must understand the development of trauma, where it starts from, because somebody can just think trauma is just something that is a buzzword, people use it loosely. But I'm going to use that as a background. There is a lot of information sifting. Kids are seeing that. That's how their body has been shot so many times, violence, programs in the television, and everywhere they go, there is always violence. So that becomes a prerequisite or predisposition for somebody to develop trauma. When we continue with Dr. T and my colleagues, we're going to be dissecting it and seeing different types of trauma. But let me give a definition as I'm asked to provide a definition of trauma. The trauma can be defined or understood as an emotional reaction. You see, then when you talk about emotion, it's something that involves your cognition, because it involves thinking, problem solving, and other aspect, which means that those will be altered, okay? And then that is also extremely upsetting by unpleasant event, all right? So we look at the unpleasant event as well. So which means that this event are not the one that we're used to day, but it become normalized by the society that we're living in. And as such, without the further information that one can provide as that to help the mind to ease, then that becomes a traumatic event which could go beyond what we expect. When we continue to that, it might be brought on by recurring or one-time situation that are too much for a single person to handle, for a mental person to handle, so that it overpowers the positive that a person has in their mind. That include the examples such as accident, gunshots, natural disaster, maybe floods in KwaZulu-Natal. There was a time not in a recent past whereby we had a snow in KwaZulu-Natal where people were trapped for 3 days. Some had to develop some problems due to that because of cold and so on. Also, an abuse. We remember there was an increase of abuse during the COVID-19, whereby people who have sharing space close to each other in the proximity without going out due to restrictions. So we also spoke about violence and loss. I'll stop there to allow Dr. T to add if she has got something to add on this part. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for informing us of that. So with trauma, are there different types of trauma? And if so, can you tell us what they are and how they differ from each other?
Yes, ma'am, there are quite a few. There's quite a few that the mind can understand or can try to make sense of them, because sometimes we don't call them by their name per se, but I'll start with the acute trauma that was caused by one simple incident, one incident at a time. Like Mr. Makane has already mentioned, if it's a car accident, if it was robbery, you know, it's just that robbery and nothing else. Chronic trauma, it's now perhaps this effects of this car accident that keeps recurring over a period of time. It's going on for some time. That time is usually determined by if it's on the accident side, it will be determined by the medical people. If it's a psychological trauma, it will be determined by us, the duration. And then we have the complex trauma, or sometimes they call it complicated trauma. That is a result of exposure to a number of events. I'll tell you now that right now at UNISA, we are sitting with that people that are going through it because one student passed on as they were writing exams. So we have, they call it complicated grief or traumatic grief, but it's a complex trauma. It's very complex because people are not used to witnessing such. So it becomes, yes, we do lose people every day, but we don't lose them in that manner. Nobody goes to write an exam and expect to lose a person. And then we have secondary trauma, which is emotional distress brought on by witnessing another person's trauma. It's secondary because it's not secondary for second. It's not happening to you directly. It's happening to somebody else. And usually this one is seen amongst caregivers. But like I said, there is more to it. There is maybe the chronic I spoke about. There's collective trauma as well. Remember, these people that witnessed the passing of a student, they were a collective. There were over 300 students in there and some stuff. So there's that term that we use for them. It's called a collective trauma. That's when now you see we will group them sometimes and then do a debriefing in a group setting because they are sharing one type of trauma. There's developmental trauma as well. I guess it's also developing based on something that happened over time, but it keeps on taking different shapes until it becomes chronic. Sometimes they call it major trauma. There's something called major trauma. Major trauma is like an injury that has the potential to cause prolonged disability or even death. There's a refugee trauma. You see, as you can see by the name, we have people fleeing their countries because of war, because of being killed, because of unlawlessness, because of homophobia and all these things. And they come to seek refuge here in South Africa. There's medical trauma on itself. Sometimes it's just because of medical conditions that, when Mr. Makane was talking about a natural disaster that might happen and it's causing people to go to the hospital and then the trauma just gets out of hand as they are being seen by the medicals.
For the next question, I would like to ask what would be the symptoms of trauma, noting the emotional, the physical, and the behavioral symptoms?
If you have already mentioned and give me a clue of what to look for, emotional symptoms, physical symptoms, and behavioral symptoms, one need to also think about some symptoms, they overlap, or the trauma shares them. with the other mental disorders like depression, like anxiety. So they are not unique. So apart from that, we also look at the duration, and there are some which are only specific for such kind of a disorder. For emotional symptoms, we're going to look at the mood swings. I'm not talking about the mood swings wherein a female is going through the PMS, yeah. So whereby you will just say, I'm traumatized. No. That is not a trauma. It's a normal thing that a woman goes through in a month. And then we are talking about a serious mood swings here. And then you end up, when we are asking you, when you're traumatized, sometimes when we're asking you something which can relieve the trauma, you become too snap, or sometimes you show some root answers and so on. So those are the aspects we're looking at when we're talking about the mood swings. So we spoke about the issues such as anxiety. Then in the trauma, there is an aspect of anxiety which can kick in as an emotional reaction to a trauma. Then we also have a depressive symptoms, wherein those symptoms that are found in depression can also be found in the trauma, because they are intertwined. Because a person who's traumatized, they are more likely going through depression as well. That is why if it is missed, sometimes they may be misdiagnosed, because we look on one aspect of the thing that they're going through. That's why I strongly mention the issue of duration and the way in which they respond. Sometimes, like I've said, they are impatient. Sometimes they are in the rush. They wanted things to be done in their way, or they feel they try to avoid a situation that can lead them to that can remind them of the traumatic events. Such kind of situation, there are emotional symptoms that can be found. Feeling detached or emotional numb. Sometimes they try to block the experiences because they haven't gone through it. That is why at most we expect people to go through that and relive the experience. That's why sometimes they have to be reintroduced to the situation. That is why the CBT comes into play, the cognitive behavior therapy. It comes in and kicks in to assist them so that they can deal with the traumatic events, so that in future they cannot have, it can be minimal. It's not like we're going to stop that, but it can be, the impact of the trauma should be minimized as much as possible, so that it mustn't bring about the serious mental disorders. In the physical symptoms, it include headaches, exhaustion, they're always tired, trouble falling asleep, sometimes dreaming about the thing which has happened, or inability to sleep. We are talking about hypersomnia and insomnia, which is an inability to sleep or to sleep more, which can, those symptoms as well, they can also be found in depression. Fast heartbeat and tense muscle. Those are the symptoms which are physical. They can also found in anxiety. So that's why I'm saying sometimes you find that these symptoms that I have, I'm saying this because we are discouraging people to self-diagnose themselves. You need a clinician to diagnose you. That is why we go to school to study this for more than 7 years. That's why you find that Dr. Tipe is twice a doctor. She's a doctor of academic. That's why before her name's this DR, but also because of studying for 7 years the mental disorders, she's a doctor, so she's twice a doctor. So you need to consult in order for you to be diagnosed. Don't go to Google and look for information which look like the thing that we're going through. So yes, that can help you to understand what you might be going through, but there is a lot which goes into this for us to diagnose that. Those are the physical part of the symptoms when it comes to trauma. The behavioral part, it's avoidance of people. This also, it shares with depression, because people are depressed. They avoid to be with people. They avoid to be places. They also wanted to be alone, So that alone, or it increases this issue of trauma. It increases for people to sink into depression. Why? Because they will do such behavioral aspect which lead them to develop depression, because they don't go to places, they avoid people, they always wanted to be alone. The difference here is that it's these ones, they bath, because people are depressed, they're more likely not to bath because they won't come out of bed. All right. So these are the things that you need to identify, because when you see yourself not going to people but you are bathing, that is difference, because a depressed person, they are more likely to neglect their personal hygiene, alteration in sleep or eating patterns. So the depressed person, I'm saying this because although we're talking about trauma, it helps you to understand or to distinguish between depression and trauma, because the people who are depressed, sometimes they become obese, Sometimes they become thin as well. Why? They change in eating habits. They either eat more, which makes them to gain more weight because they are always sleeping, or they eat less. That's where in the development of eating disorder comes in again. As a result of trauma, we're talking about all those three eating disorder, bulimia nervosa, and so on. Those can develop on the present of trauma. That's why we talk about the comorbidity of trauma and eating disorder as well. And increased alertness. They are always sensitive to small things. Sometimes when you touch a topic, because sometimes we have an open discussion with people. Sometimes when you talk like that, it alter or brings back about the memories that they are avoiding. So that is the issue of the symptoms of trauma. Then I'll leave it to Dr. T if she has got something to add on that one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on the emotional one and say that sometimes before people experience the most serious emotional symptoms like your mood swings, anxiety, depression, impatience that you spoke about, and the feelings of being detached and so on. Let us help maybe our students to look at signs of exhaustion. When somebody's always tired and they are telling you that they tried everything, but they feel always tired, exhausted, long period of sadness, because before this mood swings or whatever the depression hits, it starts as something as small as sadness, but now this sadness lasts for too long. Confusion as well, and I'm talking about long periods of confusion, of exhaustion, of sadness. Like I'm saying, a long period of sadness may result into depression. Long periods of exhaustion and confusion may become impatience or something else. Agitation, dissociation. People, we have introverts, and we just have people who from time to time will dissociate and just isolate and want to be alone. And you need to sort of like understand when somebody like me who's always around people talking, they sort of like not enjoy people's company anymore. They avoid it completely. It could still be issues of trauma. And we have something called a blunted effect. A blunted effect is just when somebody is not able to emotionally express what they are feeling. They not even in their tone of voice. They can't just show expression at all. And we also have this thing called physical arousal. Now, these are small things that we pretty much just overlook sometimes on the emotional side, but we have physical arousal where somebody always feels like they have to be engaged in a physical activity. If they're not in a physical activity, they don't feel okay. It could be also a sign that there is trauma there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tipe. Now, the next question is, what would be the link between trauma and exam stress? Also noting that this month and next month, students are writing exams.
We are not in that. And this is our busiest time ever with personal counseling at UNISA when people are writing exams. So there definitely is a link between trauma and exam stress. Obviously, anxiety will be at the top of the list. People do feel anxious to write exams, but if that anxiety can vanish after the exam or after finishing the exam, it's normal. It's normal to feel a bit panicky before exams, because at the same time, it shows the seriousness of the activity that you're about to embark on. If you come to, to an exam room without feeling anything, you might be having that blunted effect. And we are not even seeing that you have a traumatic experience. But if this is going to be continuing even after you even get the results. Then you might have to come and see us, because we don't want post-traumatic stress disorder because of exams. But yeah, there is that increased anxiety between exam writing and trauma. And people also, if there is something like that, they tend to not be able to organize information properly as they're studying. Even the instructions to take the test, that information won't be organized properly. That is another link. And then sometimes you hear people saying they blacked out. That is exam stress due to some form of trauma that we are not be able to pick up from the word go. They can't even retain information about the instruction. Whatever they're reading there, that they have to do on that day. They are unable to concentrate, focus on it, retain it, write, organize it. And on the coping mechanism, things like procrastination, substance abuse, they are very, very bad. Very, very bad. To avoid this, you just have to prepare on time. Talk to your lecturers on time. Talk to your classmates on time. Talk to anyone that can help you on time. Go back to past question papers, exam question papers. Do the work. Do the work. Over prepare than under prepare, if you ask me. That's how you can try to find some coping with this. And as I already mentioned, that it affects concentration. Once you have over prepared, this also can be cured by that. Because I've never seen anyone who has over prepared saying they are scared to write an exam, to be honest. Usually it's those people who never prepared anything or who have under prepared.
Yes, thank you very, very much, Doc. I think you have touched a lot of aspects that are very important and pertinent to this podcast. One, we also need to look at the during exam or during the preparation of exam and during the actual exam, there is an increased level in the stress because you are worried about whether you're going to pass, whether they're going to ask you those questions that you prepared and so on. So those worries, they become stress, right? There is a normal stress that is tolerated, and the stress which is beyond normal human comprehension, that brings about a retrieval of the previous experiences of the trauma. Stress is not a problem. Exam stress is not a problem. It's a normal reaction to normal stress, that's fine. But when it is linked to trauma in the sense that it triggers things that happened previous in your life or the things that you hear in the media, all those kind of things, which are, I think my good doctor has mentioned something to do with the underprepared or not prepared at all. Those alone increases the likelihood for you to develop stress, which can then bring you to the previous trauma of the other things which are not even related to exam, and they increase the likelihood for going in such experiences. That is why the memory and concentration, because you are using the same memory to prepare for exam. So therefore, traumatic situation, a biologically or physiologically aspect of psychology will tell you that they are stored in the brain called limbic system. This is the brain which is responsible for keeping information which are painful in your life. So that information is stored there for the rest of your life. So that's why I call it the hardware of the brain, because it keeps the information until your last remaining days. So therefore, the moment you try to put information through rehearsal during exam, when you start preparing for exam, when you're putting it in a long-term memory, because limbic system is involved or included in the part of the long-term memory where information has to be stored. When you are trying to do that, and it goes stuck there on the part where in the traumatic events are. So during the time of retrieval, the problems comes in, then the trauma comes in. That is why it's important for students when they're preparing for exam to always realize that it's not only about preparing for exam, it's also about to look after their mental health, because their mental health means a lot to us and it means a lot to themselves. That is why we look at the physical symptoms. The increased response to exam can trigger physical symptoms. So which means there is a feedback and feed forward. So those aspects cannot be ignored. We look at the history of trauma, such as increased heart rate and so on, which I've mentioned, the headaches and so on. That is why some people in the presence of trauma, they develop something called the gastrointestinal issues, and then issue of heart problems, issue of blood pressure, because those one, they do not have an original cause like, hey, somebody has eaten a lot of sugar or salt or whatever. These are as a result of the body inability to respond to the traumatic events. Then we also have the negative self-perception. Trauma can lead to feeling of low self-esteem and low self-doubt. Can I really do this myself? That is why it's important for you to see a counselor. It's order for you to see a therapist during that time when you are struggling. Yes, you may find that when you are trying to book in a session in our portal, you find it is difficult to do so. Why? Because we are also having a lot of increase of number of students, as mentioned by my good doctor, that during this time, we have got a lot of number of people who are coming for counseling due to the previous things, due to the things which are affecting them. Exam stress comes with a lot of pressure. And as such, when we try to dwell down and we sit down to talk about this, we find that it's not only exam stress that you are going through, it's a trauma which is causing what you are going through. That's very important. Then we also have the issue of support system. Individuals who have experienced trauma may need a support from family members, from significant others, from important people like friends, from therapists and so on. We need that. So that alone can also increase during the exam time. So that's why we advise our students, we advise the communities to support them, not to ridicule them, because that can increase the likelihood of them to develop trauma. So that is also lead us to the other aspect of resilience and growth. On a positive note, some individuals may develop resilience through their trauma experiences. That is why most people who are resilient, they've gone through the worst traumas in life, because they too try to internalize that and take a positive out of it. How many people have become innovators during the time of the COVID-19? I can't even mention a single. There are a lot, plenty people who have done a lot of masterwork, the use of online studying and so on. Those are the people who, under adversity, they become resilient, and then they bring something out of the ordinary. That's why we are where we are now. Then you will bring about learning and a podcast which you can listen to it when you are at your comfort of your home, while you are doing it online. And this is part of the thing which might have been innovated or improved during the course of the COVID-19 as a traumatic event which we went through. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makahani. That was a mouthful. And also to you, Dr. T, you have said a lot. And I'm here thinking, okay, let's say I have symptoms of trauma. I might be experiencing trauma. Well, I have trauma. What are the coping strategies that you would give to students who are currently facing trauma to ensure that they try and get out of it, or rather cope living with trauma?
During exams, while you are sitting there, breathing will do you lots of wonders, because you can't be seen getting up, going up and down. So regulated breathing, long inhales and long, slow exhales, just to ground you to something about breath is that it will always remind you that you are here, nothing else matters. There is no place you can be, you are here, all is well, all is safe. That's what breath will help you about, just to ground you. And then as you do that, you will start to feeling calm, your body will start to come down and be in a sort of like a relaxed mode, but not that you want to go to bed, because you still have to write exams. So the breathing is very, very important, because it's something you can do anywhere at any time. But if you are not seated there during the exams, there is meditation at your own leisure. And I'll tell you something about meditation. If you do this on a regular basis, it doesn't have to be long. 15 minutes before you wake up, 15 minutes before you go to bed, 30 minutes of your day. If you do this, for I know that I do it, I'm speaking from experience. If you do this for 7 days straight and you don't skip a day, do it twice a day like I'm suggesting, you are going to feel a lot of exhaustion leave you. a lot of confusion, a lot of numbness, a lot of your physical body, because your mind will be relaxed, your mind will be able to focus, to take in information. Then your physical will also follow. You won't be stressed, you won't be tired, you won't be sad. That's why they say a healthy body needs a healthy mind. So meditation really, really, really helps. If you say you don't have time, at least do it once a day, at least. There's also what we call progression muscle relaxation. That's where now that we try to relax the tense parts of our body. Hence, I'm saying meditation will also help with this. It will also help because you can't focus on directly on your muscles that are tense, but you can tell your brain that it is time to focus on one thing and one thing only, and then relaxation will follow. Also, while preparing for exams, people can have what we call structured study plans, where they create a schedule, where they manage their time, when they break it down and see where time is going to, where they see their time wasters, and they try to help themselves to balance those time wasters and to steal time from time. Everybody has 24 hours, nobody has more than that. So students need to learn to steal time from time. That is creating a schedule and then prioritizing tasks. Some tasks, I know as a student, all tasks are important, but we still have urgent ones. So I know there is urgent, there is important. They must prioritize and start with the urgent ones, high priority subjects, and then come to the less demanding subjects. They must seek support. We are here at the Directorate for Career Counseling and Development. We are helping not only with personal counseling, but we are helping with career counseling and also academic counseling. And if we can't help you, one thing is for sure, we will definitely refer you to people that can help you. We will never leave you without finding any help. If this help is not in UNISA, we will even refer you outside UNISA where you can find this help. Form study groups. UNISA is a distance learning institution, can be very lonely to study alone, but when you go on your My UNISA, you go there, you find people who are doing the same subject or module as you are taking. Find those groups, have chats with them, discuss what is difficult, try to find solution with other mates, see how they're experiencing the module. You don't have to feel lonely just because you are in a distance learning environment. And be mindful of exam preparation. Past exam question papers are there, also accessible through My UNISA, just to see the patterns. And the past question papers, exam question papers, has a pattern to show you what lecturers think is important for you to know. So you start to realize that pattern, and then you are not missing out on how to structure your studying. And then caffeine and alcohol. Hey, our students, please, during exam time, go and have that nice cold beer as a reward that you passed an exam, not before. Don't drink before and start to celebrate before you write. I know you are all over the age, above the age of drinking, but drink responsibly, And caffeine, coffee. Coffee is just as addictive as alcohol. Coffee is just as addictive. Caffeine is just as addictive as nicotine. Leave the substances a little bit and focus on exercising and all these things that I mentioned before.
Thank you, Dr. T. You have touched something that I wanted to talk about. I love this. I have to repeat it, unfortunately.
It's okay.
Even if they get angry or worried, our viewers, it's fine. I will apologize later. The part of the caffeine. In my exam preparation workshop, I always talk about this, and I want to re-emphasize because it's very important, because Dr. T spoke about alcohol and caffeine. Alcohol is a stimulant. It depresses the nervous system. You know that. I'm not going deeper on the alcohol part. Whether you have reached the legal limit, that's your problem, or a story of another day. But I want to zoom into the caffeine. And I'm not going to talk about the coffee because I'm addicted to coffee. So Dr. T, I don't know why she spoke about coffee because that's my addiction. I want to talk about this other aspect of the, what do you call them? Energy drinks, ne? Energy drinks. Mostly this one which have got a funny name. Some of them they're called dragons, some of them they're called monster. Dr. T, you can mention other that I don't know because I don't drink those things. I'm just saying it because I know there are some energy drinks which are called dragon. Imagine that name, dragon. Imagine that one called monster. So obviously when you finish drinking it, you become a monster or a dragon. So that's a story for another day. I'm saying this because you may find there are a lot of people who are addicted to this. I know I've got a friend, but for ethical reason, we don't mention people's name. We don't mention where, who like to drink these dragons and monsters. And I always discourage people. Why do you drink something which enhance your energy? Why your body itself cannot produce energy? Obviously, it says to me you are not eating healthy. And healthy eating does not mean that you must buy expensive food. It means about balanced diet. So therefore, from today onwards, you must know and understand that this dragon and monster, they're not good for your health and they're not good for your heart. Anything that the heart doesn't want, it affects the brain. How then do you think about managing or keeping information for a longer period, whereas the heart is not happy? It affects the heart, it increases the heart rate and so on. Those things already is now a no-go zone or no-go area. I'm saying this because I want you to remember that overuse of this can affect your health in a long run. What does it mean? We are going to have continuously the increased number of people who visit our primary health care, and people who really need that help from primary health care are obstructed by people who are continuously, and the budget from the government, which is supposed to go to other stuff, it's going to be increased on the primary health care for people to be helped with the heart attacks and so on and so on. The list is endless. Increase sugar level and so on. So stop using the dragons and the monster when you're preparing for exam. Drink water. Your brain is 80% water, so it needs a lot of fuel. The fuel of the brain is water and healthy food, which is a balanced diet, which is vegetables. They are very cheap. We have got warm clothes in the street that you can buy vegetables from. So having said that, let's rather continue with the other aspects. But I wanted to emphasize that so that you must understand that there are some of the things that we are causing them to cause more harm to yourself than we can do at the moment. Some of the problems, you can eliminate them so that you can have less challenges in your life, like such that I have mentioned already. So we also have the issue of regular exercise, regular exercise. You engage in physical activities. At work here, we've got a Wednesday, we call it a Wellness Wednesday, whereby every Wednesday, we go to jog, we go to do something. We've got a designated time and space for us to do such. So as such, you must try to do a brisk walk. You must walk around the place where you are working. If you are not working, go to the spaza walking so that you can exercise, and then the oxygen in your brain will be increased. So those are the kind of things that is needed. Then we spoke about the balanced diet. You also need an adequate sleep. You need to sleep enough. That's why we spoke about previously about insomnia and hypersomnia. Well, sleeping enough does not mean that you must sleep for 16 hours. That is laziness. You need to continue sleeping a required hours, 7 to 8 or to 9 hours if need allows, because some days you are tired, some days you are not tired, you're energized. So those are the aspects. So when you drink these dragons and what, they increase the likelihood for you to develop headaches. That's why you are unable to sleep. So that's why we are discouraging people to use such. I'm not being against the company which makes them. I'm trying to help students who are going to do the awareness that the food that we eat, sometimes it has got the impact on the outcome of our lives. We also have the practical self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. Speak positive about yourself. There are people who are just attuned to talk negative about themselves. I'm not good at this. That affects the issue of self-worth and self-doubt, which we have spoken about earlier. So be kind to yourself. Dr. T spoke about rewarding yourself with alcohol after a good exam and what. That is a story of another day, or her alone. Dr. T can speak about that. It's not me, it's Dr. T. So recognize what is okay to feel stress and that you are doing your best. So you must always always acknowledge that whatever I'm doing now is the best I can do. If there is anything that I can do beyond this, then it's fine. But if I cannot go beyond this, it's fine. It is normal. Do not compare yourself with somebody else. Be on your lane. Compete with yourself. The biggest challenger in your life should be yourself. Replace negative self-talk with positive affirmation. So every time when you have this negative mind which comes in, think about the opposite word which talks about positive. Then use that. Then we have got the issue of time management techniques, which is a lacking to most people, right? That is why I always emphasize on the exam preparation workshop about the use of Pomodoro techniques, which is the technique which you study for a certain number of minutes and take a break, right? Because without that, the brain cannot absorb anything. So the brain needs to take a break when you are studying. You study for 45 minutes and take a 15-minute break, whatever you are comfortable with, so that this method will help you to keep the information for a longer period, because you can rehearse it, then you can go to the long-term memory that I was mentioning. Because most times when you are studying, you are keeping the information in the short-term memory, and for it to go to the long-term memory, that information has to be rehearsed, because short-term memory is only for keeping information for a short period of time, hours or days. But beyond that, if you don't rehearse, the information died down. Set realistic goals. That's sometimes you can set the SMART goals and whatever. You know that we're gonna have things for that for another day, but you must set a realistic goal. So you cannot say to me, in 3 years I have to have an honors, whereas you don't even have a degree. So set a realistic goal, and you must know what are the required for such kind of things in advance. You break your study session into achievable tasks to avoid feeling overwhelmed, because now if you study challenging modules, I won't talk about difficult modules because I don't know if there are modules that are difficult. It's just challenging at times because of lack of preparation. So if you're studying challenging modules, when you make timetable, you must try to have at least a reliever module, which is an easier modules that you understand better, but don't be caught up doing only easier modules one after the other. You need to balance them so that you can be able to do all modules at a go or with whatever time is. So engage in positive distraction. Do not always, when you're studying, avoid the WhatsApp, the Facebook, and so on, because they can take you out of the role. When you see something that are traumatizing, then you have a triple or double trauma in the process. So that is why you must spend time on activities you enjoy to take your mind off stress. Yes, you can open WhatsApp and talk to friends when you are on break, but let it be something that are constructive and can be helpful in your life and in future. Nature, spend time outdoors. I, for one, my best stress reliever is when I'm doing my farming, when I'm with goats, because they communicate, they've got the language to communicate with me. So that alone, it helps me to reduce my stress. And as such, people always ask, how do you lighten up, and how do you deal with stress, having gone through counseling 200 students in a year who might have been traumatized? I say to myself, every day after work or on weekends, I have family time, but they must always know that there is 2 hours or 3 hours to spend with my goats. That is the way in which nature has taken toll of me. When goats communicate to themselves, I laugh, it takes away all these things. And then we also have people that we talk to. I talk to Dr. Tipe, I talk to Dr. Twan, on the personal level, that this is what I've gone through and so on. As such, it helped me to relieve the stress that I might be going through. Thank you very much. And then I'll leave it to Dr. T if she's got something to add. Then thank you very much, colleagues.
Yes. Would you please let us know how students can reach you if ever they feel they are experiencing symptoms of trauma?
Okay. Before they start talking to goats and stuff, like my fellow colleague here speaks to goats because he has learned the language of goats. Before they do that, they can find us at the counseling unit in Gauteng. The email is Gauteng with capital letter G, gauteng@mylife.unisa.ac.za, or at counseling, all small caps, counseling@unisa.ac.za. This is internal at UNISA. I'll leave Mr. Makani to also share on the other places where they can receive help outside UNISA. Thank you.
outside UNISA, I would only mention one organization, but there might be plenty. But I know SADC does a plentiful of work, and they can accommodate a lot of people, either who are worrying about things. Anxiety is part of the thing that they deal with. Suicide is part of the thing that they deal with. Depression is part of the thing that they deal with. So outside UNISA, I would recommend SADC. So those are you can get them. Their 24 hours services is available. So because we cannot cater for every student. So that is why sometimes you find that our timetable or our booking system is overwhelmed because we've got a lot of students, and we need to also take a break because this also affects our mental health. So we are saying this not to avoid taking a number of students. We will try our level best to help as much as possible. But outside UNISA, you can also get the service that we provide, and even beyond what we can provide, because we sometimes, in most cases, will deal with the long-term, short-term basis, brief counseling, whereas they deal with the long-term services. That's why referral is important for us. We always stick within the ethics and as well as the competence level of what we can handle and what we cannot handle. What we cannot handle, we send it to the right people who can handle that. What we handle, we deal with it ourselves. So having said that, thank you very much. Unless if my colleagues Kumutso, Mampe, and Rotondo have got something to add. But as from me, from my side, I thank you very much for the time and opportunity to express something that I can share with our students and community at large. Thank you very much.
Yes, the number for SADC that is standing for the South African Depression and Anxiety Group is 0800 12 1314. 0800 12 1314. I want to believe it's a helpline. There's also CIPLA Mental Health Helpline. CIPLA Mental Health Helpline. Their contacts are 0800 456 789. 0800 456 789. Last but not least, there is the South African Federation for Mental Health. It's a helpline. South African Federation for Mental Health Helpline, SAFMH. Their number is 086 558 6909. 086 558 6909 or 011 781 1852. 011 781 1852. Colleagues, thank you so much for this much needed podcast. We appreciate.
Thank you so much. Just to add on, for face-to-face consultations, please visit us at our centers either at Vaal, Sunnyside, Ekurhuleni, Florida, or Johannesburg. With that being said, we have come to the end of our podcast. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Tipe, Mr. Makahane, thank you so much for the informative dialogue. We have learned a lot from you. It has been a pleasure to interact with you and learn more about trauma and its link to exam stress. Please enjoy the rest of your day.